So thinking of that narrative poem that we just read by Michael Rosen, Trousers Down, can you have a think? Which statement do you think best describes the anecdote that he was trying to get across there? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I think it was probably something like having an adventure, because the two boys were quite young. They never said their age, but they were quite young, and they wanted to climb a mountain and pull their trousers down. Now, that is silly. So that could also be classed as done something silly too. Could be quite dangerous as well because they could have got into a lot of trouble. So that is an example of one of the anecdotes from Michael Rosen. Now, Michael Rosen tells the anecdote in a specific way. The first thing he does is he introduces the characters. So it talks about my best friend here. So it talks about a character. He then sets the scene talking about where they were, what they were doing. So he talks about climbing the Sugarloaf Mountain. So thinking about what they're going to do. He then continues the anecdote by introducing a problem, by saying that it was miles and miles to walk, that it would take a really, really long time. So that could be a problem in the poem. But then he explains that problem by talking about the mountain, the Sugarloaf, being a mountain with different bits in different countries. So maybe it wasn't quite so long after all. And then he picks something funny to talk about and to do. So he picks us something funny like pulling our trousers down when we get a certain distance, because that's what makes it funny and a bit more humorous and a bit more fun, to really simmer down that problem, make it not as big. And finally, there was some conflict at the end. Now, we didn't look at the end of this poem because it was a very, very long poem. But at the end, they went home to their parents, and their parents said, how come we've produced two complete idiots? So that was a bit of conflict there between the parents and the sons about the two best friends, about how they didn't need to do that and they thought they were a bit of an idiot. It wasn't really conflict where they had an argument. It was just a bit of joking around, but there was still that conflict at the end. Now today you are going to be writing your own anecdote based on something like at the start of the lesson when you thought about your own stories, or even those have you ever statements. Now I've had a go at creating my own anecdote. Now remember, your anecdotes have to be true, they can't be false. And I've had a think, what could I tell year 4 that might be interesting, that might make them laugh, that they might think, ooh, that's very good. So I've had a think. So I'm going to read you my anecdote and I want you to have a think. Can you spot any of the anecdote elements in mine, such as the characters or the setting the scene or the problem or the resolution or any conflict? Have a think, okay? So I'm going to read it to you. When I was travelling around Indonesia, my friend and I decided to hike Mount Batur, an active volcano located in Bali, Indonesia. This sounded exciting at the time, but then I realised we had to wake up at 1:30 in the morning to hike up this volcano so that we could get there in time to watch the sunrise at the summit, which means at the top of the volcano. I'm going to be absolutely exhausted, I moaned to my friend. She replied, so will I, but the view will be breathtaking. So we wrapped up warm from head to toe and began to take a leisurely hike up the volcano. We had to take it easy since it was so steep. Halfway up to the top, my friend twisted her ankle. Ah! She screamed. I've broken my ankle! She didn't really break her ankle. She'd just taken a funny step on one of the rocks. Minutes later, she plodded on painfully, but she said so herself that it would be worth it. It took 2 hours to climb, but when we got up to the top, the view was breathtaking. We even met a little friend at the top. So that was my anecdote, all about when I was travelling around and we climbed a volcano. And it took a really long time. It took 2 hours to get up to the top and 2 hours to get down. And in the middle, my friend did twist her ankle. She didn't think she was going to make it to the top, but we had to drag her up with us. So we managed to get her up there. And then when we got to the top, just to prove to you that it's a real story, this is the view. So this was the view from Mount Batur at the sunrise. So this was about 6 o'clock in the morning when we finally got to the top and we saw the beautiful mountains and the scenery. Here is some clouds to show you how high up we are. And here is our little friend we met at the top, the monkey. So My story was a true story, a true anecdote based on something that's happened to me. Mine was about an adventure more than anything. So I want you to have a think. Did you spot any of the features of an anecdote in my anecdote? Can you pause the video and have a think, please? Okay, you might have thought of lots of different things here that might have been in my anecdote that are features of an anecdote. But the one thing that I don't think was really in there was any conflict. And the point I'm trying to make here, Year 4, is that you don't have to include all of these features in your anecdote in order. You don't have to include all of them at all. You can include maybe 3 or 4 features of this anecdote in your own anecdote. Because the point is, I want you to make sure that you are writing a truthful anecdote about yourself that is interesting and that is going to make someone else want to read it and think, oh, I didn't know that about you. Or something that's maybe happened that's really, really funny, or you can't ever stop thinking about. It might be your favourite memory or a holiday or something. Okay. Now it's your turn. So I would like you to choose an anecdote from either these have you ever questions or these funny story, tell me a story statements. The first thing I want you to do is practice saying your anecdote out loud to yourselves so that you understand your little story and you're really getting to grips with this happened, then this happened, then this happened. But remember, it must be truthful. Then I would like you to reflect on what you have said. Is there anything that you could add to the story or anything that you've missed out that's going to be really, really, really important? Finally, I want you to write your anecdote just as you spoke it. Now, because this is just a draft, I want you to literally just write it as you spoke it. So everything you spoke, just write it down. Do make sure that you've got your full stops and capital letters are in the right places, and any commas, or if you're adding speech, remember we had a lesson all about direct speech on Friday, so remember, make sure you put them in the right places, your inverted commas. But tomorrow we will be turning this anecdote into a poem. So please don't try and write it as a poem just yet. Don't worry about rhyme, don't worry about alliteration or repetition or any of those narrative poem features that we've been working so hard on, because tomorrow is when we make sure that we include those, okay? So today is all about making sure you've got your anecdote, you understand it, it's interesting and it's truthful. I've included my example in your resources as well as these 2 examples here to give you a bit of thought, okay? I'm really looking forward to seeing these and finding out so much about you. Really, really excited. So have a lovely rest of your day and I will see you in our next lesson. Bye, Year 4.